A sudden wave of nausea at the smell of food that once caused food poisoning, or a sharp spike in heart rate at the sound of a specific phone chime, are more than simple coincidences. These involuntary physical reactions suggest our environment is constantly programming our brains with scripts we never consciously agreed to follow. Ivan Pavlov discovered the mechanics of this programming while working as a physiologist, originally focused on the study of the digestive system. During his research, Pavlov noticed that his dogs salivated at the sight of an empty food plate, or even at the sound of a researcher's footsteps, long before any actual food arrived. This observation regarding canine digestion provided the foundational framework for classical conditioning, the process of learning through association. Every conditioned habit begins with phase 1, the biological baseline before conditioning begins. This phase requires an unconditioned stimulus, like food, that triggers an automatic unconditioned response, like salivation. You then introduce a neutral stimulus, something like a bell or a balloon, that has no initial biological effect on the subject. At this stage, these variables are isolated. They are waiting for the brain's pattern recognition systems to link them together. During phase 2, known as acquisition, the neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with the unconditioned stimulus to create a neurological link. Success depends on specific variables, beginning with the time relations between the stimuli. Delayed conditioning is the most effective method. In this sequence, the neutral trigger begins shortly before the food appears and continues until the food is presented. Reversing this order, food before the neutral trigger, or backward conditioning, makes a learned response rare. Stimulus type also dictates speed. Pleasurable, appetitive stimuli require many trials to establish an association. Conversely, aversive stimuli, like pain, are learned rapidly due to deep survival instincts. The final variable is intensity. A louder or more intense trigger significantly accelerates the acquisition of the response. Timing, survival instincts, and intensity function as the rules the brain uses to decide which environmental patterns are important enough to store as habits. In phase 3, the association is complete. The bell is now a conditioned stimulus that triggers the learned conditioned response all by itself. Behaviorist John B. Watson applied these principles to human psychology, demonstrating how associations could manufacture complex emotions. In the Little Albert experiment, a child was conditioned to fear a white rat by pairing it with a terrifying loud noise. This fear eventually generalized. Albert began to react with terror to other similar objects, including fur coats and Santa masks, a process called stimulus generalization. The brain can also learn stimulus discrimination, which is the ability to distinguish between a specific conditioned trigger and other similar but irrelevant sounds. Watson's work suggested that human phobias and complex emotional responses are built using the same mechanical rules as a dog's salivation. To unlearn these behaviors, one must use extinction. If the conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented without the reward or punishment, the learned response gradually fades. However, after a resting period, a dormant response can suddenly reemerge. This is known as spontaneous recovery. These associations are rarely fully erased. They simply go dormant, illustrating how deeply these survival mechanisms are embedded in the brain. This persistence is driven by biological preparedness. Our evolution prioritizes certain associations, like taste aversions, because they are essential for keeping us alive. Researchers used this to protect livestock by lacing sheep carcasses with a nausea-inducing chemical. Wild coyotes became so physically repulsed by the experience that they would flee at the mere sight of a sheep. Critics of behaviorism argue that this model treats humans like simple machines, ignoring our individuality and free will. Regardless, these principles shape the modern world. Marketers utilize these techniques to build brand affinity, while therapists apply the same associative logic in exposure therapy to help patients overcome phobias. We are biologically wired to be programmed by our environment, but by understanding the mechanics of that programming, we gain the ability to rewrite it ourselves.